ready for a spooky story? Depends. What kind of story is it, Alvin? I found this website called creepypasta.com. Creepypasta? Alvin, I'm supposed to be the nerd, and even I have to admit, that's fucking lame. Simon. It literally says Squidward's suicide in the title. Do we really have to listen to a scary story? I don't want to. My nigga, it's literally Halloween. It's the season to be doing this shit, bro. Man up. Hey, Alvin, didn't Internet Historian already do a creepypasta video like this? Yeah, I don't really care. Also, rent is due, so I kinda have to do this. My hands are kinda tied. Anywho, on with the story. Zhao Hong Shu! I just want to start off by saying if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed. There just isn't one. Alright? I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year. In 2005, my degree in what the fuck? Dude, this is written horribly. Anyways, it wasn't paid, of course. Most internships aren't, but it did have some perks beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time would go crazy over it. Alvin, you're a horrible narrator. You know that, right? Womp womp, nigga. Just lock in. I'm trying to put you guys on. Now, since I work directly with the... Alright, this is a slow start. I'm gonna skip ahead a little if that's okay with you guys. So, at the part that I'm skipping to, he's talking about the title cards and how they're previewing an episode. Usually, the animators put up a mock title card, like how sex doesn't work. Nothing particularly funny, but So when we saw the title card, Squidward's Suicide, we didn't think it was more than a morbid joke. Okay, this is where the story starts. I am so sorry. I'm having such a hard time reading this. This is just written so horribly. I think you're doing a great job reading it, Alvin. Fuck you, Theodore. The story began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside and Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down as he has a concert that night and needs to practice. SpongeBob says okay and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bubbles splash screen comes up and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is when things began to seem off. Hold on, Alvin. I gotta real quickly take a smoke break. Gotta hit a dab real quickly. Be right back. Alright, Alvin. What happens next? While playing, a few frames repeat themselves, but the sound doesn't. At this point, sound is synced up with animation. So, yes, that's not common. But when he stops playing, the sound finishes, as if the skip never happened. There is a slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing that is common in the show, but you could very clearly hear malice in it. Squidward's in full frame and looks visibly afraid. The shot goes to the crowd, with SpongeBob in center frame, and he too is booing, very much unlike him. That isn't the oddest thing, though. What is odd is everyone had hyper-realistic eyes, very detailed. Clearly, not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more than CGI. The pupils were red. Some of us looked at each other, obviously confused, but since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet. The shot goes to Squidward, sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view out of his porthole window is of a night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part is, at this point there is no sound. Literally no sound. Not even the feedback from the speakers in the room. It's as if the speakers were turned off, though their status showed them working perfectly. He just sat there, blinking in the silence for about 30 seconds. Then he started to sob softly. He put his hands over his eyes and cried quietly for a full minute. All the while, a sound in the background, very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded like a slight breeze through a forest. All right, Alvin. I'm back from smoking weed. What happens next? Hey, yo, Simon, you got any more of that dab? I'm fiending for some shit right now. Bro, sorry, I'm all out of size. I smoked all that shit. Yeah, you can go fuck yourself then. The screen slowly begins to zoom in on his face. By slow, I mean it's only noticeable if you look at shots 10 seconds apart, side by side. His sobbing gets louder, more full of hurt and anger. The screen then twitches a bit, as if it twists in on itself for a split second, then back to normal. The wind through the trees sound gets slowly louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere. The eerie part is this sound, and Squidward's sobbing sounded real, as if the sound wasn't coming from the speakers, but as if the speakers were holes the sound was coming through from the other side. As good as sound as the studio likes to have, they don't purchase the equipment to be that good to produce sound of that quality. Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, very faint something sounded like laughing. It came at odd intervals and never lasted more than a second, so you had a hard time pinning it. After 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over the screen, as if a single frame was replaced. Alvin, I'm scared. I need my vape. Where's my vape? Shut your goofy ass up, Theodore. You don't know what I've been through. I haven't had any fucking weed in 3 hours. Nigga, I'm relapsing. Fuck. Nah, Jet's tripping. The lead animation editor paused and rewound frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a still photo of a dead child. What the fuck, bro? What does this have to do with Squidward committing suicide? Anyways, he couldn't have been more than 6. The face was mangled and bloodied, one eye dangling over his upturned face. Popped. He was naked. I'm not gonna say that. He was laying on some pavement that was probably a road. The most upsetting part was that there was a shadow of the photographer. There was no crime tape, no evidence tags or markers, and the angle was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would seem the photographer was the person responsible for the child's death. We were, of course, mortified, but pressed on, hoping that it was just a sick joke. The screen flipped back to Squidward, still sobbing louder than before, in half body and frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in a hyper-realistic style, looking as if you touched it. You'd get blood on your fingers. The wind sounded now as if it were that of a gale blowing through the forest. There were even snapping sounds of branches. The laughing, a deep baritone, lasting longer intervals and coming more frequently. After about 20 seconds, the screen again twisted and showed a single frame photo. The editor was reluctant to go back. We all were, but we knew he had to. This time, the photo was that of what appeared to be a little girl, no older than the first child. She was laying on her stomach. I'm not gonna fucking read this shit. That's not good. About 5 seconds after the second photo played, Squidward went silent, as did all the sound. Like it was when the scene started. He put his tentacles down, and his eyes were now done in hyper-realism like the others were in the beginning of this episode. It's just like the thumbnail. They were bleeding, bloodshot, and pulsating. He just stared at the screen, as if watching the viewer. After about 10 seconds, he started sobbing, this time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud, and most inducing of all is the sobbing was mixed with screams. Tears and blood were dripping down his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, and so did the deep voice laughing. And this time, the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames. Alrighty, I think we're at the part where Squid shoots himself. Alvin, I think Simon's passed out. He deserved it. Maybe if he shared some of his he probably would still be awake. But no, he just had to smoke all that shit. The animator was able to stop it on the 4th and backed up. This time, the photo was of a boy, about the same age. But this time, the scene was different. The entrails were just being pulled out from a stomach wound by a large hand, the right eye popped and dangling, blood trickling down it. The animator proceeded. It was hard to believe, but the next one was different, but we couldn't tell what. He went on to the next. Same thing. He went back to the first and played them quicker, and I lost it. I vomited on the floor, the animating and sound editors gasping at the screen. The 5 frames were not as if they were 5 different photos. They were played out as if they were frames from a video. We saw the hand slowly lift out the guts. We saw the kid's eyes focus on it. We even saw 2 frames of the kid beginning to blink. The lead sound editor told us to stop. He had to call in the creator to see this. Mr. Hillenberg arrived within about 15 minutes. He was confused as to why he was called down there, so the editor just continued the episode. Once the few frames were shown, all screaming, all sound again stopped. Squidward was just staring at the video, full frame of the face, for about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out, and that deep voice said, "Do it." and we see in Squidward's hands a shotgun. Ooh, this is where it gets good. He immediately puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him and his bed, and he flies back with the force. The last 5 seconds of this episode show his body on the bed, on his side, one eye dangling on what's left of his head above the floor, staring blankly at it. Then the episode ends. Mr. Hillenberg is obviously angry at this. He demanded to know what the heck was going on. Most people left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us to watch it again. Viewing the episode twice only served to imprint the entirety of it in my mind and cause me horrible nightmares. I'm sorry I stayed. I think this is a great place to stop. The main point of the story has been met. And I'm kind of getting bored of this. The video is long enough as is. Yeah, I guess I was a 5 out of 10. Not a fan of a lot of the filler stuff. I feel like if it was just the stuff about, like, the cursed SpongeBob episode, it could have been good. But I don't know.